At the April 28th Committee of the Whole, Council hears budget presentations from 3 departments and 1 comment from the public asking for action on speeding cars along South Martin Luther King Jr Boulevard. There's also 1 sneeze and 2 jokes. Welcome to What Lansing Council, a podcast transforming Monday night's Lansing City Council meetings into an enthralling recap. I'm your host, Jill Dombrowski, and here today is my special guest, Sophia Saliby. Sophia works at our local East Lansing public media station, WKAR, where she produces and hosts All Things Considered. Hi, Sophia.
Hello.
Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's funny to be on the opposite side of the mic situation.
Yes. How's it feel so far?
I'm like, what am I going to say wrong? But it's really funny because I've interviewed you and now you're going to interview me.
Yeah, this is so nice to have you here. And I know that you have covered a few stories we've heard about at council lately, including the transfer of the Ultium battery plant from GM to LG Energy and the old Eastern High School building demolition.
2 big issues that I think a lot of people have a lot of stake in different ways.
Mm-hmm. And how do you decide which stories to cover?
I think a lot of it is about public impact. That's kind of what public media focuses on, not just WKAR, but other NPR stations, NPR in general, is how does this impact people? And with the Ultium cells, it's obviously about jobs. It's about taxpayer money spent to get that off the ground. It's about when that will open and kind of how people will take to EVs or maybe not, depending on a lot of different factors.
Sure.
And then with Eastern, obviously there's a lot of personal stake there was a lot of personal stake in that building history-wise, but you also have to balance that with the city's modernization needs and building a new psychiatric hospital. So there's not a right or wrong in the situation, but I think our kind of goal is to present those opinions and give context to those opinions.
Yeah, and I'm seeing that a lot with your stories. Also, I saw the measles outbreak you're covering.
Yes, which is definitely, it was so funny. I had been on vacation for a week and a half, which is quite long for me. And I did Monday. I was very tired. I had got on the phone with a friend at 6:00. And then 15 minutes later, I get the press release. There's a measles case. And I'm like, I have to call you back because this is, I think, not what people were expecting. I think it was the first case in years.
Yeah.
And obviously now we've seen a second case connected to that first case. I've learned that an outbreak is when there's 3 connected cases. So not an outbreak yet in Ingham County, but there is another outbreak in Michigan. So, I think there's a lot about that too, about personal choices, about how people have changed since the pandemic. You've seen vaccination numbers in general for flu, for COVID, go way down. And so it's definitely something that I know health officials are kind of banging the drum to say, people need to get vaccinated, because if not everyone is vaccinated, then it kind of defeats the whole purpose.
Yeah, that's tough. Because people have heard about it for so long, and maybe they're just tired of the issue, but it's still a big one for all of our health.
For sure.
Well, thanks for keeping everybody on the ball.
Thank you.
Could you tell us how you would describe Lansing in your own words?
So I have kind of 2 thoughts. One is growing pains, and the second is quirky. I've lived here for now just about 5 years, and I came in right in the middle of the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
So my representation of what Lansing was before 2020 is not there, but it is definitely a city that has its own sense of humor, as I've learned, and I've really enjoyed getting to know that sense of humor. And then I think there's a lot of ideas about what the city wants to be, and we aren't quite there yet. And so I think there's a lot of different pushes from different folks about what that will ultimately look like. And obviously there's movement on that with New Vision Lansing, which is a huge downtown housing development. I believe the city's tallest building is going to get built.
Whoa.
It'll be there. I think about that billboard right by the Nut House that says Downtown Lansing alive after 5. And I'm like, no. I don't know when the last time it was alive after 5. I'm so sorry. But
that's the dream.
Yeah, I would assume maybe in the 80s or 90s that was the case, but not in 2025.
Right. Yeah. And you got to start somewhere. I mean, something has to start. So we'll see how it goes with this new vision, new reality. And what is something that you like about Lansing?
I think there is a lot going on. I guess this is a good and a bad. There's a lot going on in little pockets of the city, but you have to know the pockets of the city. And that was kind of the hardest part, adjusting to living here, because I came from Atlanta, and that was very easy to plug myself into. Obviously, it's a much bigger city, so I'm not like, I wasn't expecting that when I moved here. But you do have to know people. And I think for people who are transplants, it's a little bit intimidating. But then once you find those places, it's really cool, because you're like, I kind of know a secret.
Now you're in the know.
I'm in the know. I know about Big Penny, and I know about Frandor and all the little secrets.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. What's something that you'd love to see change? I'm
queer, and I went to the gay clubs a lot. I mean, I was much younger when I was in Atlanta. And I feel like I know Spiral was there pre-pandemic. There was the Exchange, which was briefly open for about 8 or 9 months. So I would like to see more, places for people of different groups. But I know people are cultivating those spaces. I think about Megan Shannon's
Tiny Bit of Wood,
Tiny Bit of Wood, which I did a story on. But now she hosts events like Art Bar, or for other groups that might not have a representative space in the city. I think about 517 Our Space with Mikey Austin, who has done a night at the Soul Lounge at the Avenue, and they just did an event at Gray Wall Hall. And they have like a couple of like festivals throughout the year. I think Juneteenth, Hispanic Heritage Month. So people are creating those spaces definitely since the pandemic. I think there's kind of been a move to make publicly accessible events for different communities.
Yeah, that's interesting. Something I think about with media is everybody has the opportunity to consume whatever they want. And so I think a lot of times people haven't seen the same thing or heard the same stories, definitely not from the same perspectives. And so it's kind of like, I feel like media used to be a way that really unified people, like everybody listened to the news, the 5 o'clock news or whatever. And now you're not really getting that. And how can we all be on the same page about what's going on in our city if we're not getting the same information, I guess?
That's a great question. If only we could figure that out.
What's the answer?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's for public media to give a very brief history. WKAR has been around for more than 100 years, but the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is kind of the funding mechanism for NPR and PBS, those have only been around for about 50 years. Okay. So if you think about the folks that were tuning in to hippy dippy NPR, they're much older now and they're very loyal, but they might have issues kind of tuning into the newer forms of media, like social media, online news sources, TikTok, where a lot of people get their news nowadays, I'm hearing.
Okay.
And younger people maybe aren't tuning into the radio exactly, or don't know that they can tune into the radio. So I think there's kind of a definite generational problem that public media specifically is dealing with, but also traditional news sources in general, is how do we maintain what we traditionally have, but also expand to new audiences? And I think I have kind of the privilege in my job, is most of my job is doing the news every day and doing kind of the top line things, but I have space for feature stories and interviews that hopefully kind of introduce people to folks who are doing interesting things in the greater Lansing area. So that's kind of my goal, is to do that. So
to do it all.
hopefully it's being heard.
Tell us about what's going on with the public media funding at the federal level. I know that's something you had some concerns about.
Yes. So Congress puts money in the federal budget for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which then gives money to NPR, PBS, and then member stations. This money is now considered being taken away as part of these kind of large funding cuts we're seeing at the federal level. From what I understand, the Congress will be asked to rescind money that was already budgeted for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting for the next 2 years, and taking that away from NPR, PBS, and public media stations like WKAR. So this is faster. This was always kind of a concern, but now it's happening faster than we thought. And I have been thinking about when people talk about privatization of the Postal Service and how maybe private businesses might only think about what's profitable, and it will become way more expensive for people, up in Marquette to get their mail, because it's not worth having trucks go all the way up there, go all the way out to places where you don't just have as many people. And I think about the same thing with public media. We do more than just news or classical music, what you hear on your radio or what you tune into on TV. We provide reading kits. We're huge on literacy and education. We have the radio reading service, which is we have volunteers come in and they read the news for people who are visually impaired. That's been going on for 50 years.
Oh my gosh.
You look at what other newspapers, commercial radio and TV,
they're not going to be doing that.
They're not going
to make money off of it.
Exactly. And if it comes down to the bottom line, maybe they will cut a local paper, or maybe they will cut a radio station because they don't have the ratings. Mm-hmm. But with public media, our goal is to be there. And especially, as things are changing, it just really, it's so hard to visualize what would happen next. And we don't know what will happen next. I'm glad you're having me here now to talk about this. And to say that there are people hear a lot of news about things that are changing and they're like, what do I do?
Yeah.
It's so much.
Yeah.
But if public media is something that is important, we have ways that are very easy for people to support. Those are at our website at WKAR.org, to give a plug for,
amazing. Yeah.
for this. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And I went to the website, WKAR.org, and I clicked on the button that said, call my senators now, and it had them, all three of my senators, who are Representative Tom Barrett in the House and Alyssa Slotkin and Gary Peters in the Senate, and they called all three, and I had a really nice time leaving phone messages for their staff. I love a voicemail. I love leaving a voicemail, so it was a good 10 minutes of my day.
Well, thank you. And I think we want to make it easy for folks. I appreciate anybody who listens to the station, who gives to the station, but this is the time.
Nice. Yeah. Now's your moment, everyone. And now we're going to talk about the council meeting.
Also exciting. I'm on the edge of my seat. Well, you promised jokes, so.
Yes. We'll see if I can deliver them the way that they were in the meeting. I can promise that there were laughs in the meeting. There weren't. But the jokes were said.
Okay.
This is the Committee of the Whole meeting from Monday, April 28th. It's not a regular council meeting, just the Committee of the Whole. So it was kind of a short meeting. No decisions or votes on big ordinance changes, anything like that was made. And I was not aware of this meeting even happening until I was reviewing council's budget schedule and I saw it on there. When I got there, the security guards were like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm here for the council meeting. They're like, oh my God. Like, we didn't know about this. Like, there's 4 people in there. Like, go ahead. So at the council meeting, all members present. And our council is Ryan Cost, the president of the 1st Ward, Jeremy Garza of the 2nd Ward, Adam Hussein of the 3rd Ward, and Brian T. Jackson of the 4th Ward. Our current at-large council members are Jeffrey Brown, Tamara Carter, vice president, Trini Pelivanoglu, and Peter Spatafor. As well, there's the note taker, Sherry Bork, the council's internal auditor, Charles Randall, the city attorney, and Mark Lawrence, the mayor's chief of staff. To kick the meeting off, we had one public comment, and this was from a member of the public who lives along the South Martin Luther King Jr Boulevard, where last Thursday 5 cars crashed.
Yes, I heard about this.
Yeah, resulting in 13 folks being hospitalized. No one was killed, but a lot of people were hurt, and he said people need to be charged, there need to be consequences. Since the speed limit was increased from 35 to 45 miles per hour, he's seen folks going 60, 75, 90 miles an hour straight past the cops, and since COVID, the cops can't do anything about it. Crime is on the rise in Lansing. Things need to be changed.
Yeah, I won't say where I live, not to dox myself, but I definitely live on one of those major thoroughfares where people are speeding. Mm-hmm. And I'm a heavy sleeper, but I've definitely had people over like my mom, who's like, how do you sleep? People are always speeding at night. That's not how she sounds.
It's loud.
It is loud.
Yeah.
And I've definitely been driving on like Saginaw, and people are, even in the middle of the day, are like dodging and weaving. So I definitely think that's a major concern, especially when you have a crash like that.
Mm-hmm.
I know there have been talk of putting in more medians because that just naturally slows people down.
Yeah.
Speed bumps.
Yeah.
We don't have speeding cameras in the state at all. So that would take legislation at the state level to change. And I don't know how people would feel about that.
Yes. Some pluses, some minuses there for folks. I've heard from being in the neighborhood and thinking about this issue and trying to speak out about it. Andy Kilpatrick, the public services department head, he'll say, we'll put in speed bumps, we'll put in these radars, and then it's the neighborhood folks who complain. Like, they're the ones who want to go fast through their streets. So it's tough. It's a tough issue, I think. And also, that MLK Jr is a state road. It's a state trunk line. Saginaw, those are state trunk lines. So it takes a lot to see changes, I think, because you've got to get the city and the state on board. Next, and the rest of the meeting was budget presentations. So we had 3 departments. This is the city is going by department, reviewing everybody's budget, and the council's having people come up and give a little presentation, the department heads they want to see, and they've given them all a list of questions to answer. So they've got something to say, and those are like, how's your budget changed? Are you adding positions? Have people left? Like, what's your vacancy? Are you buying any new equipment? They recently changed over their accounting software, so like, how's it going with that? And they have this phone line that people can call in now, the 311, that'll let you call in just to one number and they'll transfer you throughout the city.
I called 311 this morning.
Oh, how did it go?
I mean, I've used it a couple times, but I was calling to ask if I could drop off my estimated tax form, because I'll be honest here. I am bad at filing my taxes, and it's taken me a couple of years to finally figure it out as to what I'm supposed to do with everything. I'm all good now. In fact, I overpaid this past year.
Wow.
So I got a lot of money back. So I already did it.
Perfect. Did 311 help give you the right answer?
Yeah, they said, you can drop it off. There's 2 places. And I said, great. And usually when I'm calling 311, it's about taxes. I won't get into the whole, because it'll make me sound very stupid.
Should we do a budget review of your taxes?
Hopefully not.
Okay. Well, glad people are getting the information they need about their taxes, you included. First, we had Jason Gabriel from the Public Media Department, and we're here in the Public Media Center right now. So I know Mr. Gabriel. He has been very helpful for me getting this podcast set up. Thank you. And he said that their biggest budget change was from their move into this facility. So they're now paying for parking. The internal auditor was all over this. Why is it so much? It's $13,000 for 9 employees. And the chief strategy officer, Jake Brower, was there, and he said, yep, that's what it is, $123 per month per employee.
Yeah, that should have been my what I don't like about Lansing is parking. I historically don't like paying for parking at all. And I feel like, I understand why people need to pay for parking. That is my personal thing.
Yes.
But I do think there had been talk, not to derail the budget talk, but I think there has been conversations about doing 15-minute pickup parking. Like East Lansing has a couple of spots that are like 15-minute pickup drop off. And I don't think we have those in Lansing, which obviously isn't related to paying for employee parking in the city.
It seems like it would be a good idea just to the whole parking ecosystem. Gabriel talked about how they're cross-training staff for efficiency gains and adding programming to reach out to high school students and veterans to give them access to video production equipment and training. Everybody seemed happy about that. So next was Public Safety Department Director Andy Kilpatrick. This was council had a lot of questions for Andy, and he was there. He had all the answers for the most part. He also had Deputy Director Jeremiah Kilgore, and they said they're having some increases in road spending. They're moving some monies from the major to the minor roads. There are going to be some fee increases for public services. And Kilpatrick was saying that we've held off on the fee increases due to COVID, but now we're like catching up to where they should be due to inflation. And also for the sewers, there's been a lot of projects to do, improvements to the sewer system, so we're having larger fees there. And the fleet, so public safety buys all the cars for all the departments. President Cost was asking about this, like, how are the vehicles chosen for efficiency? And Kilpatrick was like, well, the police, they want the vehicles they want. They want to have the big SUVs and the trucks, so that's what they get. Then there was a blip in the audio, and Gabriel went into the recording area to make sure it all was fine. And it all was after that. Kilpatrick said that the 311 service has reduced their department call volume by 2/3, but they're in a staffing shortage, so they haven't eliminated any positions because of the reduction in calls to them. They're all working hard. In efficiency gains, he talked a lot about some mechanical projects at the wastewater treatment plant, fixing valves, changing the way that waters are moved around.
All important things.
Indeed. Spatafor and Jackson asked about a planned solar installation at the wastewater treatment plant, and Kilpatrick said he is worried about the tariffs. It could cost a lot more for that than they were projected. Kilpatrick said they're planning to try out salt brine distribution on the roads instead of just salt when it is icy. And this is kind of a new thing with a number of benefits. It can be applied preemptively, so before the snow and the ice hits, and it'll stay in place. It can be more targeted, and it's less expensive because you're using less salt, because when you're doing it, just dropping the salt on the ground, it like flies everywhere as soon as...
Or it clumps up or something, whereas it's diluted in water, brine. I don't know what's in there.
Yeah, so they didn't give the exact chemical formula, but it sounded like it was just water and salt, so they would need some new equipment to distribute the brine.
As opposed to the trucks that have the like whirligig on the bottom, the very technical term. But if you've seen them, you know.
No, that's what it is. So instead of the whirligig, they're going to have the, quote, like agricultural trucks. And here's the first joke. Spatafor says, but different smell, right? And Kilpatrick is like, yes, we are not dumping the sewage onto the roads.
Which I work in East Lansing, and there is a cow farm somewhere that has been working through their farm because the whole campus smells not great.
The smell of research.
Probably.
Science.
And it is a very strong smell of research, I'll tell you that. Did Spatafor get laughs on that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
he gave it a shot.
I always say with jokes, it's sometimes about quantity over quality. Like you're gonna miss the 100% of the shots you're not gonna take.
Yeah, keep trying.
Yeah, so throw out a joke.
They're also asking for 2 new positions in the public safety department. One, a dedicated efficiency person for their budget, and then a second person for trash permitting technician. And this is for going around and like picking up and assessing the trash, not in the bins, but just stuff that's been dumped like into the parks and in the right-of-ways and stuff like that. Councilmember Brown was asking Chief Strategy Officer Brower if he was in support of adding this budget position, and Brower says that he does. Public service is a lot of moving pieces and very complex, so there's a lot of like little things that could be caught and changed. And at this point, the attorney moved to the side to sneeze, but Councilmember Brown was talking at the time, so he actually moved into frame for the city TV.
To sneeze.
Yes.
I mean,
it's live. So
it's live city council. You never know what you're going to get.
And when you're sneezing, you're not maybe thinking about which way the cameras are hitting you. So hope he's all right. all the council members were asking questions about public safety. So still 60 vacancies on the books. Are these posted online? Yes, most of them. People need a commercial driver's license for many of these positions, and it's competitive. They're not that competitive with the private sector, I guess, to get people to stay. They're talking about technical road repair methods, and here President Koss made a joke. Are we using the same materials with the roads that built Big Penny?
Woof.
Yes. Big Penny really in the news a lot. That's our bridge, a railroad bridge over Pennsylvania Avenue for those not in the know.
Which I sometimes get nervous driving under.
Me too.
I'm like, it feels very Final Destination to drive under that bridge. Not because you're gonna get, my car's too high, but because like I look at it, I'm like, a lot of trucks have been stuck under here.
Like, is the structural integrity
Yeah.
still sound? Is anyone checking that?
Yeah. I can't speak to that, but I definitely, like, as just a regular person driving, I'm a little nervous sometimes.
You take your chances there. And Cost was asking, how are we prioritizing which roads get repaired? And Kilpatrick had a bit of a long-winded answer to this that was like, well, we're doing preventative maintenance on some of them so they don't get so bad, and some we're just like letting go. And
yeah, I think there's a road that it's not even a road, it's an alley road. I am also a participant in the food scraps drop-off program.
Oh, yes.
And I drop off behind Fire Station 1.
Mm-hmm.
And so I drive back there, and then there's like an alley, and that alley is so torn up.
Oh, no.
It is, and especially bad in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, who's going to, talking about how much paving costs, like that is definitely not on the top of the priority list.
And last, there was the Human Relations and Community Services Department with head Kimberly Coleman and others. And she gets my award for best dressed. She's been at meetings before. She has a very strong style, black and gold. At the meeting, she had this beautiful form-fitting dress that was black with some gold stripes and a dime-sized gold chain-linked necklace.
Ooh.
She's looking very fine. They had a short presentation. They have changed some titles for some positions to be in compliance with the President's Action Ending Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion programs. And other than that, they are working on rent smart initiatives to help serve folks in untenable renting situations and homelessness services. This is not cost saving to the city, but it will be better serving to the community. There was some confusion around their budget. They are seeing a 25% increase in personnel costs with no added positions. Chief Strategy Officer Brower said that positions have been reclassified, and there you go. Then there were a few miscellaneous budget item discussions for the whole body. They're continuing to fund the Charter Commission into the next year. The opioid settlement money that the city gets needs to be very clearly marked for a restricted account. Can't spend that on whatever you want. And Councilmember Jackson wants to see some wording changes in the environmental stewardship section. He said, let's strike support the Paris Agreement, because no one in the city is really doing that, and nor is our nation. And just change it to act.
We're seeing as journalists is that when you go to these protests and events, there's everybody has a different thing that they're worried about and concerned about.
Yeah.
And so I think it's kind of going to be, and this is something I think that Democrats as a whole are kind of dealing with as well, is like, what do we focus on? Because there's a lot to talk about.
Yes.
So I think, after these first couple months of the Trump administration, which have seen a lot of change, I think when it comes to people who are unhappy with those policies, there might be kind of a moment where people start to organize more strictly under certain policies that they have a problem with, because when everybody has concerns about tariffs, about DEI initiatives, about businesses. So I think that as a journalist, there is a lot it has been very hard to kind of nail down what people want,
find that focus,
and to find that focus, and it's also hard because it's like, people are at the Capitol every week with different concerns, and not to say one is more important than the other.
Yeah.
But I think it's been challenging for me as a journalist to kind of think about, what do people want to hear about, and maintaining balance too. Because there are plenty of people who are very supportive of what the president is doing, and there's a lot of people in Michigan who are not.
As soon as the meeting was adjourned at council, the security guards were there ushering all non-city employees out because they needed to do their sweep of the building.
They said it's done.
It's over. Get out. Anything else you'd like to add?
Follow WKAR. Of course, there's some big city elections this year, the mayoral race, city council races. You have several city council members who are, it's a big flip-flop of changing seats, running for at-large seats instead of a ward seat, running for a ward seat instead of an at-large seat. You have one city council member running for mayor.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a busy year. We're going to try to do our best to cover all of these races and make sure people are able to make informed choices at the ballot box.
That's right.
Support public media. I'd love to have you join us to listen to All Things Considered.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes, and thank you to the Public Media Center for letting us record with you, and thank you all for listening.